Welcome everyone to our management skills workshop. This is one of the topics that you guys suggested that you wanted to hear more about for the conversations with scientists, but since we realized as we were thinking about the topic, we realized this would be much better as a workshop than a panel. Here we are today, and we are delighted and really lucky to have Dr. Marquita Qualls with us. She is a chemist by training, but a true leader at heart. She has over 20 years of leadership experience in consulting, coaching, and motivating people in a range of leadership and professional development areas. She has a wide range of professional experiences, but most recently she's the founder of Entropia Consulting, a small management consulting firm with expertise in the areas of leadership and professional development. And so we are really lucky to have her with us today. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Marquita. I sent you guys the slides that she'll be using today. So if you haven't seen them, take a look at your email. It should be there. And so, yeah, take it off, Marquita.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited. Yeah, I get the waves to make it seem as though we're right there in the same room together. Don't you? You gotta love technology. So I know, thanks Monica for the introduction, and some of you are probably saying, yeah, what does all that really mean? What I've done, I'm a graduate student. I was a graduate student. I graduated. I went to work in industry for a while. I enjoyed it. And then I decided that there was something else out there for me to do. And so I had to decide, do I want to continue on in industry? Because I actually left for a while. Took some time off, and I had to decide, well, do I want to go back into industry or do I want to start my own consulting type firm? And I decided to start my own firm. And initially I focused a lot on just strategy, strategic planning and development, because I had learned a lot while I worked in industry. We talk about transferable skills, management skills. And so everything that I learned while I was in industry, I said, you know what, I wish I would have learned in graduate school. I wish we would have had an opportunity to learn some of these types of skills in graduate school and during our training. And so I started a consulting firm focusing more so on people with STEM backgrounds who had an interest in exploring and utilizing their skills outside of the laboratory. Now, that being said, it's not that everyone that I work with or everyone has a desire to go into industry or to go into government or to go into nonprofit. Even for those of us who decide to go into academia and become professors, there's still management skills, there's still leadership skills that we need to have and that we can utilize, learning them right now in graduate school. So when we're ready to make that transition and transfer, we'll be ready to hit the ground running and be productive and successful. So that's my story in a nutshell. I always like to start off, and I really appreciate Monica saying I am a chemist, because a lot of times I remember going to trainings and, you know, you kind of look at people and you say, do they really understand? She or he doesn't understand what I go through on a day-to-day. You just don't understand my advisor. My PI is very difficult to work with. I've got to produce. I've got to do this. And I understand because I was there. And even though it's been some years, unfortunately, the graduate training process has not changed much in the last 20 to 30 years. So the same things that you guys are doing now, that's what we were doing when I was in graduate school. So let's get started. Can everyone hear me okay? I see the head nods, and there's a lot of us, so I'm going back and forth to both screens. So yes, you can hear me. And I can see you. Some people I cannot see. Does that mean that they're phone only, or does that mean that they've turned their video off?
So some people are on the phone and you'll see a phone look like a little icon there. Some people may have their cameras off, but if you scroll, so there's an arrow on the side. So if you scroll on those, you'll see some of the missing faces, and then some people have their cameras off.
Okay. Don't be shy. I'd like to see you. For those of you that turned your cameras off, I want to see you participate. And for those of you on the phone, I understand. So let's see. Let's get started. Management skills. There is a raise your hand feature. Yes.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
gonna
there
ask
is.
you a couple of questions. And just to kind of get baseline of where you are, what you're interested in, some of your concerns. When you think about management, what comes to mind? Are you more concerned about managing you're going to have 4 options here. And if you want to answer more than one, then that's fine. But when you think of management, are you more concerned, or are you concerned about managing your own performance? How many of you are concerned about managing your own performances? Is there a raise your hand feature, or are we just
Yeah. So they're raising their hand. So if you go to participants, you can see
yes,
the
there
hands
we
that
go.
have been raised. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hands up.
Gotcha. I was on the wrong screen. So how many of you are concerned about managing your life and managing the work-life balance? Okay, that's good. I'm glad to see that most of you pretty much have a handle on that management aspect. What about managing the communications or the interactions with your advisors or PIs or committee members? Okay, good. And finally, what about managing how you interact with your lab mates or your group mates? Okay, so I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me and everyone is participating, because I'm not seeing hand raisings toward the end. So I don't know if that means that you're okay on the management process, or if you just decided not to participate in the polling. Either way is fine. I just need to know and making sure that the features are working. Okay?
Yeah, I think there's some people that are not sure where it is, but I think that can give you a sense of where people.
Yes, it does. So thank you for that. And that's really good, because when you talk about management covers a range of areas. Management is not just about managing a person, a direct report, or being someone's boss. When you talk about management, you are managing people, but you're also managing expectations, and you're also managing time, which are very important. And those are the 3 things that we'll be talking about for the rest of the day. But before I do that, hopefully you were able to go and at least take a look at that feedback survey that Monica sent out a link for. And you may be wondering, well, why is that important as it relates to management or anything on the people management? You have to think about perception. You think about how people are viewing you. But even before you think about how people are viewing you, how do you view yourself? And so that's why that tool is called Epic Leadership. When I was working, the consulting that I've done, the people that I interact with, the people that I have known to be successful, as well as the successes that I have seen, in any management or leadership role that I have held, there were 5 core competencies that helped me achieve the successes: entrepreneurship, professional flexibility or adaptability, intrapersonal awareness. So how well do you know you? And that is key. Do you know yourself? Before you have to be able to manage yourself or others, get to know you. Interpersonal interaction. And that's one that most of us say, oh yeah, I got that one. I'm really good with people. I'm a people person. But what does I'm a people person really mean? And then finally, you have your cultural competencies or cultural consciousness. How well are you aware of your environment? Ethics, diversity, being accepting of others' thoughts, ideas, and opinions. All of those things are really important when you are managing and leading other people. But the focus of today, we're going to really be talking more so along the lines of management. So when you think about it, who really matters? Why does it matter if people are concerned about how you're managing your time, managing your expectations, or managing other people. Why is that important? Would someone like to share?
You can use the raise your hand feature. Liz, why don't you go ahead?
So the question is, why is management important in your working environment?
Yes.
Well, I think I'm both in the side of academia and out in a real job. So management is something that I have learned because I work with a group of people, and not only in academia, but also in a job setting. So if we don't work as a team, we don't deliver what we do. So in the museum, we deliver content for the public, and in academia, we deliver for a PI. So management skills are important, not only for your own work, but also to get along with others and attain goals.
Right. So thank you, Liz, for that and sharing on the dimension of management from a people perspective. Would someone else like to talk about how they feel or what they think or why management is important from a time or an expectation perspective?
I think Gabriel had put a comment in the chat. Gabriel, do you want to expand on what you mean by it shows productivity?
Sure. I think everybody, especially in the academic environment, you have all of these PIs and at least where I work, you have like seminars every once in a while, and if you are able to manage your time properly and people see you working and people see you that you are accomplishing things, then that looks good on you and how motivated you are to accomplish your goals and try to, my case would be to graduate. And it's not a direct, I would say it's not a direct correlation. Some people takes longer than other, and that doesn't mean that they're not using management skills correctly, but in general, I feel like that's the feeling you have in academic environment. People sort of judge you if they always, sort of see you that you're not working or you're not producing, you're not, developing new data. That's what I meant.
Good. Thanks for sharing. And what about managing expectations? Why is that important?
I think a question that to complement that is, do you have to be a manager to be managing? Right?
No, you don't have to be. A manager is a formal title, but all of us have to manage our day-to-day activities. You have to manage yourself when you get up in the morning and you're putting on your clothes. So you have a set of activities that you're organizing and that you have to accomplish. So manager, a lot of times, and that's something that we have to get out of the mindset. We have to open our mind as to what is managing. And we'll get to that a little bit later in some of the slides when you start thinking about who's a manager, who's a leader, right? But you don't have to manage people to be a manager. All of us are managers. We're the managers of our time. We're the managers of our expectations. We're the managers of ourselves. And in some cases, we may be the managers of other people.
Yeah, that's great. Juan, I think, had something to say about managing expectations that it sounds pretty interesting. Juan, do you want to unmute yourself and talk a little bit about it?
I think he may be muted on the systems. There you go.
Okay. Juan,
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, I think managing expectations helps to regulate your emotions, not expecting too much of what a situation or expecting the well-deserved amount of expectation from something. I guess it's just that if something doesn't go the way you want it and you were expecting something more, you might get frustrated, and that could be a setback in time, or that could intervene with any other objectives that you have.
Great. So I want to move on just a second here because we're going to get into this a lot deeper, and you'll be able to have more discussion on it in some of the breakout sessions. But I need to set some expectations. I need to have expectations and understand what are your expectations for this workshop. So kind of utilize the chat box, and that'll give me an idea. Why are you here? Aside from it's a requirement, but why are you here? What do you want to learn, or what's your expectation at the end of this meeting? What would you have expected to learn? So just to give you a couple of seconds for everyone to kind of jot a couple of expectations, and that helps me as we go throughout the workshop to make sure that I hit on certain points, and other points then I can kind of breeze through. Make sense?
Okay, don't be shy, guys. Use the chat all the time.
Yeah.
They're
What-
they have their thinking caps on.
What are you wanting to get out of what are your expectations for this workshop?
You can type them up, or you can raise your hand and speak up, maybe? Or would you like them to type it up?
I'd like them to type it out because it gives me a visual. I can gauge where they are.
Okay, so type it out.
Think about this being in a live workshop setting, and we're all at a flip chart. And so we're just throwing out ideas and we're writing them down. So not only will I be able to see what some of the expectations are, so will the rest of your classmates or the other participants. Time management. Okay. Okay, there are 32 people in this room, and I don't see 32 comments. Are we all thinking? Do we need some more time? We may be virtual, but you still can't hide because I can see you. Okay. Okay. All right. Good. Monica and Giovanna, you feel free to add what your expectations are as well.
Putting us on the spot.
If you've been to any of my live workshops, you know that I'm very interactive. People have to participate. I draw on your energy. So if you guys are going to sleep and you ladies are going to sleep, then I may doze off. Which, by the way, because this is online, if you feel that you need to kind of walk away for a second and not look at the screen as much, feel free to do so, because for 40 years of my life, I never wore glasses, but after working on the computer for so much, I now have to have reading glasses for my computer screen. So I want to save your eyes. All right, good. So this is giving me a good indication of where we're going to go, some of the things that we want to focus a bit more on. By show of hands in the video screen, have you all received the slide presentation packet that Monica sent? Yes? Okay, so I'll give you a little heads up clue. I won't go slide by slide. I won't be showing every slide on the screen here. Again, it's more so conversational, but I will use your slide pack as a guide, so feel free to take notes. If there's anything that you don't understand or you need clarity or question, just jot it down and raise your hand, chat it out, and ask the question about something on that particular slide if it's not covered sufficiently for you. Okay? Yes? Okay, great. So the first thing is levels of management. And so we talked about, Giovanna, can you give me control?
Yes, I think if you can just press share screen, and
Okay.
I'll go ahead and approve you if I need to. Perfect. We can see your slides, Marquita.
Okay, great. So levels of management. Someone asked the question a bit earlier about, well, who is everyone a manager? Do you have to be a manager? And so let's again, set the foundation or baseline of management. At the very ground level, you are responsible for management of self. And that's very important. You've got to make sure that you are managing your own development, you're managing your professional development, you're managing your activities, you're managing your time. Because if you aren't able to effectively and efficiently manage yourself, then how well will you be able to manage others when you're ready to move to the next level? When you want to be a group leader or you want to be a team leader. Even in some cases, for those of us that are moving or transitioning into postdoc roles, we may have to do a bit of lab management. We may be over a lab. But if we've not first understood and had a great management of self, we won't be very good managers of others, right? And then once you master the management of self, you're able to master the management of a group or your team, then you will be ready to manage and lead other types of organizations. I'll put a pause here, a button here, and say that should be off screen sharing now, yes?
Yes.
And you can just see me.
Yes.
Technology is great. So I use this for a one-on-one, but the larger groups is really, really good. So we're all learning here. Giovanna and Monica are managing me and helping me, so it's a learning experience. So the management of self, management of groups, management of the organizations. How many of you feel that you do pretty well on managing yourself? You can just raise your hands. We can, by show of hands. Gabrielle says, no, I can work on that area. Carlos, you're doing pretty well on managing yourself. Why do you think you do well at managing yourself? And what are some of the things that you have done that have helped you be a good manager of self?
I took a few courses about management at NYU. I think that helped me realize what to do and what not to do.
And you applied those things that you learned?
Yes, I tried.
Do people notice?
I tried to implement a few of them in the lab. I guess they noticed because it's being implemented.
Gabrielle? Did you raise your hand? Oh, he says no. No. I will call on you. It's okay. And Monica and Giovanna, if there are others that are raising their hands that I don't see them, I don't have everyone in my screen, please let me know that as well.
Wilmari is raising her hand. Why don't you go ahead, Wilmari? Well, I see the blue hand there. I can't hear you.
She quickly took it
No,
off.
I'm really bad managing myself and managing my time. So
why do you think so?
I think that I procrastinated too much, and then I'm not very good prioritizing. So
we all have varied degrees of how we manage ourselves. And so for the next couple of slides, we're going to think about how we manage ourselves, but we're also going to start thinking about management styles. Now think about this. When you are going into work, or you're going to the store, or you're going out and you're driving, and let's just say there's traffic, and you want to avoid that traffic. So you take another route, right? You may be able to take a detour. The same thing can kind of happen with our management styles. And I'm going to share, ask for the screen again. So managing ourselves, managing people, it's really a balancing act. You've got to learn which management style to use depending upon who the people are and what your situation is. So for some people that say, oh, I'm this kind of manager or I'm that kind of manager, yeah, those are the ones that typically aren't as effective as they need to be, because managers need to have styles that are flexible. And it goes back to the EPIC competency. You have to have some professional adaptability. One style may not fit every particular situation, just as one style may not fit every person. Being a manager of people, and that's the section that we're going to be talking about now, managing people. And sometimes managing people means managing you, but managing people is about learning which approach to use It's about learning other people and listening to other people and observing their styles. And then you'll have an arsenal of approaches or tools or techniques to use. All right. So let's think about it. There is no one size fit all management style. Would you agree with that? Have you ever known people, advisors, colleagues, peers that have tried to utilize one particular management style, a one size fit all approach? How does that work? Doesn't work too well. And that's what we're gonna see. And hopefully you're gonna be able to start to utilize different management styles for yourself or when you're managing others. The other thing to think about is because there is no one size fit all, the characteristics or the character of the manager, be that you or whomever else, that really is gonna influence their style, their management or their leadership style. If you're more passive, if you're more kind of hands off, then there's a style for that. It can still be effective, but it fits your personality style. So the one thing that I don't want you to feel as though, well, my personality doesn't fit someone that's more direct. That's fine. You don't have to be a direct style, but the style in which you choose, you make sure that you practice it and you're effective in getting your results by using that style. All right. And then sometimes it's a blend of approaches. It may not be one style all of the time. You may have to use a combination of those styles. And I know you're saying, well, what are those styles that I can use to blend? I'm going to do three main styles. And the three that I picked, they're probably, if you look in the literature, there are about 6 models. Some of them are overlapping, but I chose 3 to focus on for this particular session because these are the 3 that we most often experience in our laboratory or in science type environments. What are they? They are, I'm going to get the screen again. It's an autocratic or a directive style, a democratic style, and a laissez-faire style. Anyone want to take a guess on what each of these mean? I mean, I'll go through them, but I'll give you an opportunity to tell me what you think they mean. Autocratic, democratic, or laissez-faire? I just found a new tool.
How would you like them to comment? Would you like them to use the chat or would you like them to raise their hand?
I would like them to speak, so I'm looking at raising your hands.
Sorry, Liz, I see you. Why don't you go ahead?
I'm sorry. So I had experience with the first one a lot, which is the micromanager. I call it micromanager, so I don't know if she could put the slides, but the first 3 is like the direct. And what was the first to the left?
Autocratic, directive.
Directive. So is that what I like a micromanager? So it's the one that would say, this is how we're going to do it, and
yes,
this is how it is, and there's little room for opinions or changes.
Yes, that's correct.
So I have a lot of experience with that one.
Yeah. Leslie has a comment on the democratic and the laissez-faire. Leslie, do you want to talk about it? She can't speak. Susanna, what about you? Do you want to talk about laissez-faire?
Mute. I think it's life will show you the way, or do whatever you want. There are many options, like no direction at all. There's direction in disorder. That makes sense.
Yeah. Who knows French here? Laissez-faire is French.
I'm trying to find the person that just spoke. We're 30 minutes in, so I'm getting the hang of this. By the rest of the time, we're going to be smooth sailing. I don't see the person that just spoke.
It was Susanna.
Susanna. Oh, gotcha. So, yeah, let's think about our grad advisors. Let's think about our PIs, and let's think about their approaches. Some of you have really great PIs, advisors. Some of us may not have had such pleasant experiences with our advisors in terms of their management style. You go from one extreme to the other. And so if you're going to take some notes here, I want you to think about this. As Liz was saying, the autocratic or the directive manager, that person is do what I say do. Do what I tell you. Very hands-on, right? I'm sure we all have seen PIs or advisors like that. It may be your advisor. It may be one of your friends' advisors in the lab, right? Democratic is both you and your PI are compromising. So when you think about the democratic way, your advisor is saying, hey, let's do this together. Let's have build some consensus here. So if you're thinking about hands-on for autocratic, democratic, you're holding hands. You're doing this together. And then you have the laissez-faire. That person is very hands-off. That's the person, that's the manager that lets you do what it is that you want to do. Advantages and disadvantages to each of those management styles. The autocratic person, the autocratic management style, even though it's painful for some, even though it's difficult for some, when you're in a new environment, when you are newly starting a project, that particular style is beneficial because you do need more direction, that directive. You need, when you're starting out, it's not to say, even in autocratic or even in the directive style, that's not to say that that type of manager doesn't listen to you or doesn't appreciate your feedback or contributions. But in the directive management style, that person really takes his or her responsibility of being the manager to heart, and they aren't always willing to bend. They may listen to you, but ultimately it's going to be, well, this is the way I want it done because it's the way that they're most comfortable in executing those decisions. People who have autocratic styles are also those people who aren't as comfortable with risk, because in order to let someone else do things or delegate responsibilities or delegate tasks, it's a risk that they're taking, and they may not be as comfortable with those risks. So they kind of keep things close to the vest where they have control. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Can you relate to managers or PIs or committee members that are more on the autocratic side? In just a few seconds, we're going to go in a breakout session, and you'll have an opportunity within your groups to talk about these styles a bit more and apply them to situations. But I really want to make sure that we have an understanding of the types of styles, because it may be that it's not, they're not doing anything against you personally, but it's just their style. And once you recognize that it's their style, you can develop some tactics or strategies or tools to help you better deal with how they're managing. It goes on in the managing up, managing out category. The democratic style, that's the one that we like, right? We want to be involved. We want to have a manager that appreciates my feedback, that really wants to hear what I have to say, that takes my ideas, accepts most of my ideas. I want a manager that is consulting me, that's seeking out my opinion. That would be an ideal case, right? Most of us like to have a democratic styled manager. Would that be a yes or no? Show of head, shake of hands. Yes? That's a great style to have. It's the preferred style. But guess what? Even a democratic style management has some downfalls or cons. Anyone want to take a guess as to a con or a disadvantage of the democratic style? I see you, Liz. I want to make sure and see if there's someone else that wants to chime in. Maybe I've met Liz. Did they make you the designated speaker? Because don't let them put that pressure on you. Don't let them pressure you. Nestor, no. I see you there. Go ahead,
Liz. Hear me?
What I was going to say is that sometimes when you do this democratic process, the decisions can take longer because you're trying to accommodate everyone's ideas and things. So it can be a little slower than it could be.
Absolutely. The democratic style, even though it is a preferred style, even though that's the one that we like because it makes us feel a part of the process, when you need to have a decision made, if you have a manager that wants to get everyone's feedback, well, I need to make sure that Giovanna, I've got her input. I need to make sure that I've got Kelvin's input. I need to make sure that Anna is on board with this. And by the time you've gotten everyone's consensus or everyone's feedback, you've missed deadlines, you've missed opportunities. That person who has a more democratic style, that person doesn't, well, let me put it in a positive. Democratic people often tend to be pleasers. You're laughing, Susanna. Why are you laughing? They tend to be pleasers. They want to make sure that everyone is happy. They don't want to rock the boat. And sometimes you want to make sure your manager or leader is decisive. You want them to not be democratic. You want them to take a stand and, hey, let's go forward. The last one is the laissez-faire. You know, sometimes you would think it's great to have a laissez-faire management style. Oh my gosh. Some people love it. Some people don't. It works if you're a self-starter, if you are able to, you know, you tell me what to do once and then I want to go off on my own and get it done. If you have a manager that has the laissez-faire style, that's what they do. They're completely hands-off. And it doesn't matter if you're new, if you've been in the lab for 3 years, if you've been in the lab for 5, 6 years. If you have a laissez-faire advisor, you may have had a meeting with your PI at the very beginning and you've had a discussion about your project and your PR advisor has the expectation that you can do this. You don't need a lot of help. You're a self-directed starter. That person may or may not be available for meetings. They may or may not respond to emails. You may need to get feedback on an article that you have drafted and they may or may not be there. That style is really hands-off. And even though I will tell you from my own experience and experience of my clients, people often say if they would like a manager who's laissez-faire, especially if they have experienced one that's very autocratic. But what are some of the downfalls of a laissez-faire management style? Why would you not want that particular type of style?
And here I think
I can tell. I know.
Go ahead.
It's very hard. It's very hard because you can do whatever you want, but then sometimes the distractions are so many that you just don't finish that task because everything is important for that person or everything is interesting. So you're a doer, definitely. That's what we need. We need results. We need papers. We need figures. That's one of the things.
Yeah. I think Wilmari also had a good point. Wilmari, if you want to speak up about what you wrote on the chat.
Yeah, my advisor is kind of like laissez-faire, but then if I distract too much, then he's also mad. But then what I'm thinking is that in a PhD, you're also there not only to produce research, but also get a training. And then if your advisor could not provide you that training, then who will be? Then will be just yourself trying to figure out, and then it will take longer. And those kind of things he needs to understand it. And some of them does.
Yeah, you have to think about it. Like when we were in graduate school and going to the next phase of our careers, we didn't have things like this to help us become more aware of various management styles and how our management styles impacted others. Think about it. When we're in graduate school, when we're in the lab now, we are pretty tunnel focused. We're focused on working on our projects, individual contributor types things, and getting our experiments done, getting the research done, getting out, right? And so we don't always focus on how my style is going to impact others. And when I become a PI myself, we don't often realize that the style that we utilize in graduate school in helping us move through the process may or may not work when we're now leading a team of other scientists to get it done. If I was, and if you are, in your labs now, you have to think about this. This is like a hold up a mirror thing here. Are you an individual contributor? Is your management and leadership or work style one of where I can do this on my own? I don't need to tap into or ask or rely on other people. I just want to focus on getting my work done. I don't want anyone to bother me. If that's your style right now, if that's how you get things done, then likely if you move into a PI type of role, you'll likely fall into the autocratic bucket. It may be a tough pill for some people to swallow, but the reason why is because you're so used to doing things your way, on your own. You've done it only your way. And so when you move into a management role, rather than seeking out others' advice or opinion, you will tend to be, okay, well, this is what has to get done, do it this way. So be careful about that and just kind of think about how you're operating now. Just do some self-reflection. If you are an individual contributor, if you do, and if you are one of the scientists that likes to, I'm going to get in the lab, I'm going to do my experiments, I'm not going to really interact a whole lot with my other lab mates, I'm not going to really venture out down the halls and see what other labs are doing or some of my other graduate student people are doing. You really want to kind of be careful about that, because when you transition into a postdoc role, when you transition into another team role and starting on your new job, or even in a PI type of role, that style carries with you, and you may not be able to get things done. Now, how do you feel about autocratic? How do you feel about democratic? And how do you feel about laissez-faire styles? That laissez-faire one, you guys gave some really good points on the pros and cons of each of the styles. If you want to get out, and I'll give you a personal story from my graduate school experience. My advisor was pretty hands-off. He's really, really smart guy, but he was really hands-off. And he didn't realize that his hands-off was not helping us to grow and develop as graduate students, particularly because we were a new lab. So he had just moved to the university. He wasn't a new professor, but he had transferred to to this university. And we were all new students. And so one day, it was three of us, 3 first years and a new professors in this new environment. We went into his office and we said, hey, look, we think that we need to move to another lab because we need more guidance. We need more directions. We need you to be here. That was a wake-up call for him, because here we are. We're the hands, we've been selected for his lab. We had started to do some experiments, but here we are coming into his lab and saying, hey, these are what our needs are. You aren't here. We're ready to move to another lab. That was a wake-up call for him to say, okay, I do need to think about how I'm interacting with my students more. And so as a result of that, there were a couple of steps that we went through, but as a result, we ended up having more frequent meetings, group meetings, team meetings, and even one-on-one meetings. But that's what we needed. But he didn't realize that it was needed, because he was like, okay, they're smart, they can do this, I'll just let them be. But that's not the case, especially when we're trying to get a degree and we're trying to learn a lot of things, what's needed. Who knows what it's required to get a PhD? Only thing you know is that you have to contribute an original piece of science, but that process of getting there, we're all green. I don't want to have to figure it out on my own. I need some guidance. Nestor, you're shaking your head in agreement here.
I also thinking about in the academic context is a little different, because it's more a laissez-faire style. But when I was working in a hospital, I have a mentor that was a laissez-faire style in the academy. But in the hospital, was my supervisor is very direct, and I have to follow Medicare rules and everything. So I have to be more democratic, no, to deal with two different styles at the same time.
To keep your own sanity.
Yeah.
So it's important, he raises a good point, it's important that you are able to recognize other people's style. I just have to reiterate that point. You have to recognize other people's styles, and that sometimes will influence your own style. So Giovanna wrote in the chat that, you know, when you're managing a medium-sized or small types of organizations, sometimes the democratic way is not appropriate. Doesn't work, right? But at times, when you are managing a group, you really do need to have the other style. So it can be a combination. You have to know and understand and be comfortable enough with each of those styles to know which one to use when. All right, let's transition, because I'm sure you guys are ready to get into a breakout session and start talking about this a bit more and applying some of, okay, I understand what this is now, this is the situation, but I also want to address another area, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen again. So let's see. I'm going to share the screen. Have you all ever heard the, okay, I'm not sure why that's not working here. I said I was going to have it together. Have you all ever heard of the concept of managing up? Have you heard of managing up?
Let's see a show of hands.
I see some shaking heads, so
I see shaking heads, so that means no. Mostly when we hear managing it as it relates to people, we're managing down or direct reports, right? Is that what you're typically used to? Yes, no, maybe so.
Most people are shaking their head yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Well, let me put this up. Can we see?
Yes.
Yes. So managing up. Management is very directional. Think of you being in the center. If you can think of you being in the center. You manage down, which is what most of us are accustomed to, developing talent and skills of yourself and those who are more junior to you. So that's a direct report. So that would be like your PI is managing you. If you have graduates, if you're a graduate student and you are managing undergrads and their activities, that's a managing down. So people that are below you. Then you have the managing out. That's the management of your colleagues. That's the management of your peers. So on one end, you're managing your internal relationships with those outside of your direct line. So it may be that not your PI, it's not your advisor, but you have committee members. And you have to manage the expectations and even sometimes the time of your committee members. You have to manage your peers, manage your lab mates. Those are people that are not in a direct line of reporting, but those are those on the periphery. Is that making sense? Does the slide help? Okay. The managing up part, and I think this will answer many of the questions that I saw coming through on the chat. Managing up is very difficult, but when you do it and you learn to do it and you become more comfortable in doing it, it makes your life so much easier. Managing up, meaning that you're managing your manager. It means that you're demonstrating your value to those that are above you in your management line. And by demonstrating your value, it's sometimes where when you show them what it takes for you to be successful, or you're able to communicate with them what it takes to be successful, then they will respond in a particular way. You show your value, you show what it is that you need, they respond. So even the example of that I just gave about my advisor, that's a managing up. We needed to show or demonstrate our value. Hey, we're valuable in that we're your graduate students. We're the ones that are going to be doing your doing these experiments, generating papers, but we also need this from you. We need you to change your behavior. Now, you don't always have to say that specifically, but we can work on that offline a bit more about how to do some of these things. But the general concept of managing up is making sure that you are managing. You are managing your PI, even sometimes your committee members may be on a managing up aspect as well as managing out. Go ahead. Does that concept make sense to you? Yes? How many of you have had to manage up? Yeah, a couple of you. You may not have realized that that's what you were doing, but let's see, we have comments. You may not realize that that's what you were doing, but it's actually managing up, managing down, managing out. So the directional management. Okay? How many of you would be willing to try to manage up? If you had more, yeah, Monica's raising her hand. How many of you would be willing to try managing up? Yeah? Okay, so we're going to do a breakout session, and you're going to think about some of the ways in which you can manage. So Giovanna's going to help me with this.
Yes, just give me 1 second. I need to make one change.
So while she's doing that, the other thing about managing, and it's a simple thing, but I think all of us really understand the value of this, is when you're managing, it's very important to recognize and reward those who you've been working with. When you're recognizing someone that you're managing, even if you're managing yourself, the recognition tends to really motivate you or inspire you to do more. It's not saying that you're working for the recognition. You're not doing things just so that you can be recognized. But as a manager, when you take the time to say and acknowledge to someone, hey, you've done a really good job, even if they're just words, but they're public words or a public email. Some of us may even have folders, email folders, when someone sends you a note of congratulations and says, hey, you know what? Great job. That's recognition. And the rewards, hey, your advisor may say, let's have a pizza party. You guys have been working really hard in the lab. We've produced a lot. I'm going to buy you pizza. That's a reward. You may not always get a monetary reward, but there's some tangible and intangible things that you can have as well. So that's something that you should also remember when you are thinking about your management, recognizing and rewarding those who are reporting into you.
Okay, Marquita, we're ready for the breakouts if you want to give them the instructions.
Okay, so if you look in your packet, there should be a slide that says breakout exercise. And what you're going to do, how many people are in the groups? How many did we have?
We have 3 in each group.
Okay, so for each of the breakout groups, I want you to think about a time when you have seen each of these management styles. And just pick one of them. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you let's do 10 minutes to talk amongst yourselves and think about the style. Think about what worked about it. So what was the situation, what worked about the style, and what didn't work about the style, and what could they have done differently? So that could either have been you in a management position, or it could be a situation that you were in with your manager. Make sense?
Sounds good. Okay, so everybody will, the deal. We'll break you out in groups. The people that are on the phone will also be broken out in a group. So make sure you're unmuted so that you can participate with your group members. All right, see you all in 10 minutes. Gabriel? Mayrim, are you there? My might either be on hold. We're on hold. Or she joined in a different manner. Oh, there she goes.
Okay. So how's it going so far?
Good. I think you're challenging a lot of what they know about management.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the idea of the different styles was very well received. I think it started getting to them thinking about how there's no one style and the pros and cons. I think a lot of them had like immediate reactions about autocratic, bad, or, but I think a lot of comments show that they were thinking deeply about that. And then I think the managing up part was also kind of revelatory for them.
Yeah, I think that was eye-opening. You're like, what? I can do that?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's interesting because something that we've talked about in other contexts of other topics and conversation is the idea of, you have to know your value and what makes you unique and how do you communicate that to people. We talk a lot about effective communication. So I think that concept of managing up really ties well with all of that because, you have to know what your value is to your manager, to the group that you're working with. But you also have to know how to tell people and how to express that, how to make that value apparent.
Right.
So I think it ties very nicely to other things that we've talked about. So something that I don't know if you were planning on talking about or, I don't know if we have time. But I saw a lot of comments about delegating. Like people are not sure how to do it and I think there may be some misconceptions about like, well, I'll just give people my work and they'll do it. And ta-da!
I was thinking the same thing. I was about to type, it's delegating doesn't mean just giving somebody and letting them run free. You have to mentor, you have to train, you have to monitor.
And I think that's what us as scientists, when we are thinking about moving into the management roles, that's something that we don't quite grasp. It's like, oh, wow, I'm a manager now. I can just tell you what to do and it's off my plate. No, it doesn't quite work that way. It really, for management, you are managing everyone else's activities. And so if you are delegating, if you're asking someone else to do it, sure, that frees up time for you and you're able to leverage that time to work on something else. However, you still have to make sure that it gets done.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're managing, and just to use the word manage, you're observing, you're monitoring, you're checking back in to make sure that it gets done. And so you can't be laissez-faire. Laissez-faire, that was funny.
I know.
I don't know if she meant it, but...
Well, it was quite appropriate because most laissez-faire are pretty lazy.
Yeah.
But I tried to keep it positive. That management style doesn't work well with delegating because nothing gets done. You're continually, it's almost like passing the buck. And so that's your style. If you are a PI with that style and you're a graduate student, it's miserable.
Yeah.
You have so many frustrations, and we listen to graduate students. I don't understand, my advisor's not there. I need them to be more hands-on. He told me to do this or she told me to do that. And I'm just kind of out in the wind with, I don't know what to do. When in the PI's mind, because that's his or her style, they're thinking, okay, they don't need me. I'm just going to let you be you. I don't want to be micromanaging. I don't want to be labeled as a micromanager. They're even more people pleasers than the Democrats. So let's see. I'm trying to figure out how to... I had a feeling that it would be more content than we would have for time. Because, let's see. How much more time do they have? Yeah. I want to address the question about delegating. I'll probably say it a couple of times, just like we just talked about it here when they come back from the breakouts.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Lester joined us.
Yeah, he must have fallen out. I'll reassign him again. Lester, if you can hear us, I join you back to your original breakout room.
There have been a lot of comments. So when this is over, if you could send me the transcript, I would be more than happy to read through the comments and follow up if necessary.
Okay.
For things that we didn't cover.
Perfect. Yeah, in terms of focusing the rest of the time, I think the delegation issue is a good one. I think practical tips for managing up, particularly for those that have those laissez-faire or laissez-faire mentors or PIs, would be a good one. Because sometimes it is a little bit hard, you know, when you're expecting them to know how to be your supervisor, and, you know, if they're not really doing their job or they're distracted with other things, then they're paralyzed because they don't know exactly how to address it.
Do you, or have you done anything on managing conflict?
A little bit in terms of the PI student relationship.
Okay.
But, yeah, I mean, if I think, you know, the things that you've mentioned sound good. I think if we're crunched for time, then I would maybe make sure that we cover time management, because that was something that I saw a lot when they were typing out what their expectations were about what they wanted to learn. I saw a lot of them talking about time management. So I definitely would make sure to cover that. But, you know, I think talking about delegation or how to delegate, and then also giving them practical strategy. I mean, they love anything that's practical. Mm-hmm. They're always like, tell me how to do it and I will. So, you know, I think
I'm going to caution them about that too, because everything isn't boilerplate.
Yep. Yeah.
That would be a good message for them.
Yes, that is.
Just because it works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for me.
Yep.
My delivery may not be the same. I mean, I may be able to say something to my advisor. You may not be able to say it to your advisor in the same way. So sometimes those practical, here, step ABC, doesn't always work. We've got to kind of sit back, evaluate, and sometimes talk to other people about, what do you think about this approach? Will this work?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that would be a great message to deliver to them, because they're always, you know, I think they can be a little too prescriptive. It's like, oh, just give me a how-to of how to fix anything, and I can do it. I'm a scientist. I know how to follow protocols, but we're always trying to remind them, you know, these are, you know, people are sharing their experiences, their anecdotes, and yeah, I mean, there's some strategies that have been proven, but, you know, you need to know what works for you, and I think they have a hard time with that sometimes. So I think that would be great to stress that it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Mm-hmm. And that was definitely one of the points that we were talking about. It was on their slide. There is no one-size-fits-all. So I'll bring that slide back up, maybe, and kind of talk through that one.
Hello, who's on the phone?
Hi, it's Lynette.
Hola, Lynette.
So I had some issues in the small session and no one could hear me. I'm on the phone, so I called back. I know I heard, I think it was Lean and Gabriel talking, but they were never able to listen to me.
Oh, that's a shame.
To hear me, yeah.
Do you want me to assign you again, or maybe to?
Sure.
Okay.
How much time do we have?
About 3 minutes. 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. I can. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Lynette.
Thank you. That's fine.
Assign to. There we go. I wonder if we had we muted her, Monica, on our end?
No. I don't think so, no. I'm going to run to get some more water. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Jennifer, how are you? How is it going for you? Are you learning anything?
Of course. It's very useful. I got really excited when they chose this particular topic. I think that everyone can actually use all of this information in your day-to-day life, not just in a professional manner.
Mm-hmm.
The managing up piece, it's like you have to manage up. You manage your parents. Kids are the best. I don't know if you all have children. I don't have any children. I have nieces and nephews, but they're the best at managing up.
Yeah.
They get their parents, they get their grannies to do whatever it is that they want to do.
That's true.
Yeah,
It is.
they're great they're just great at it. And the one thing I like about coaching now and really trying to reach to a graduate student, early career audience in coaching, in addition to my more senior level coaches. So the same types of things, just as you said, Jennifer, it's transcends, but we don't see it early on. And so if we were exposed to more of the coaching and more of these types of, concepts or types of these tips early on, then as we progress throughout our career, it makes our life easier as well as those that are working around us. Managing up is it's one of the top areas or top topics that I often deal with some of my senior clients, the managing up aspect, because you have to think about if I'm working with the director level or VP level, then their manager are the CEOs or COOs types. And just because you're a director, just because you're a VP, you still need direction. You still need them to tell you that you still need them to be available. And so we work on strategies on getting that CEO or getting that senior VP to be more engaged with his or her direct line or business line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes they're out of touch with the actual tasks. So you have to help them visualize what the actual work is going to look like.
Oh, that's really funny. Will Marie says she doesn't trust anybody to do her job, so she's very bad at delegating.
Yeah. Trust issues. So I think it's been 10 minutes. Do you want to bring them back?
Yes, please.
Okay. It'll take about 30 seconds.
Okay. Hello.
Hello, you're back.
Oh, okay.
Remember to mute your phones, so the people on the phone and the people on the computers.
How do I mute it?
You on your cell phone, there should be a mute button. Hello, welcome back, everyone. Remember to mute yourselves if you're not going to be speaking. Marquita, I think they're all back. So if you
okay, great. So just by show of hands, show of faces, how was this breakout? Did we learn anything from it? Did we have a lot of sharing? Okay, I'm going to randomly pick someone, and I'm going to pick two different groups. And so hopefully the two people that I pick are not in the same group. If you are, then I'll have to pick someone else. So, and if I mispronounce your name, let me know. But Ivelisse?
Yes.
Help me with the pronunciation, please.
Ivelisse.
Ivelisse? Okay.
Ivelisse, yes.
Say again?
We talked about kind of few things. Do you want me to give an example or?
Yeah, so we're going to give you like 2 minutes, but I want you to talk about the situation, which leadership style, which management style was utilized in that particular situation. Did it work well? Did it not work well? And if it didn't work well, which style would have been more appropriate?
So we talked about different things. So for example, we are in different years, so it made it kind of difficult. We all different situations, but we basically put it in a way where we had a micromanager situation or a very laid back situation in the lab. And we were able to recognize that either the micromanager style didn't work for us when somebody else is leading us. Mm-hmm. So for example, your professor or your PI is not around as much, or he is around, but it's not a micromanager. It's letting you to have a flexibility of setting goals and expectations and give you a time frame to do things, mm-hmm. and you work with that. But we actually recognize that we are micromanagers of ourselves by timing us daily. And so that was kind of different in I mean, in terms of the situation and the year in where we are in right now, but it was basically a common thing in the three of us that we discussed.
Great. Thank you for that feedback. Christian?
Hi.
Hi.
So in our group, the predominant one was the laid off one. And that's the one I'm not, because in my particular PI is more hands-on. But the other two in my group talk about how it was. And interestingly, in different levels, because they're hands-off, but one of them is even more hands-off than the other, even in that group. But I think what was very interesting, one thing that we touched upon that was interesting is that even though each of them they were slightly different and they have their own styles, at the end of the day, we can see benefits and disadvantages on all of the groups. And the question that we all, or the thing that we all got to at the end was like, well, does that mean that is there really a better way or not to work with a PhD student? Maybe there's not. I mean, they all have different levels, and at the end of the day, I think you just it's going to be a little different for everyone. So,
and I think that's a great point. It's a great summary point, and you could have actually had my summary slide. But I really want you all to remember, when you talk about managing, I'm going to try this sharing the screen one more time. Desktop, share my screen. Yes? Management styles. These 3 points, I really want you all to remember these 3 points when you're talking about management styles, when you're thinking about your style, and when you're evaluating the style of your PI or your committee member or your department chair. There is no one size fit all. So we talked about those 3. There are a couple of others, but those are the 3 main ones that we typically experience, particularly in our lab settings. Directive, autocratic, democratic, or laissez-faire. Which style you use depends upon both the person as well as the situation. So the character of that manager, the personality of that manager, it's going to greatly influence which style that they're using, which leadership or management style that they're using. And on the flip side, you put yourself in that situation, the management style that works best for you when you're thinking about in terms of managing up, you may have to help your manager, you may have to help your PI better relate to your management style. And how do you do that? It's communication. I know one of the things we were talking about when you guys were in the break room is we often like for there to be a boilerplate or a direct script or a recipe, if you will, for how do I get this done? I'm having this issue with my manager. I'm having this issue with his or her particular style. Can you tell me what to do? No, I can't tell you exactly what to do, because what works well for me and my manager, even if, they may be all a democratic style, but even in their democratic style, they still have different personalities. So you have to make sure that you are engaging and reading and communicating with them so that you will better understand their style, and then they can better understand your style. No one size fit all. Depends on the situation and the person. And then, as Kristen said, there are times where you may have to have a combination of styles. And a combination of styles may mean that if you're dealing with a group in a group dynamic, for one person, you may have to be directive. But for someone else in that group, you may have to be laissez-faire, or you may need to be laissez-faire. Right? Yes? Okay. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? So the other thing that I want to talk about, and we're going to get into, I see a lot of things going under delegation in the chat or comments, and you're talking about styles and delegations. It's also about expectations. So how do you delegate? How do you use these management styles to delegate but still manage some expectations? Let's think about that. What is an expectation anyway? when you're setting an expectation or you're managing an expectation, it's really about performance. How well are you doing something? I'm expecting you to do this. You're expecting them to do that. And so managing that expectation really thinks about what you think about on that performance, so that delivery of that performance. You're setting the expectation. My expectation is that you will be graduating with, all of you will have a PhD within the next 5 years. That's my expectation. It's a performance issue. Now, you're going to help me manage that expectation, right? But that's what it is. When I check back, I may check back in with Monica or Giovanna 5 years from now, tracking all of you. How's it going, Dr. such and such, or Dr. so-and-so? But the expectation piece is really, really key. And I think you guys learned I don't know when your last session, but you learned about SMART goals. SMART goals are very good in helping you manage expectations. Don't think I forgot about delegating. It is coming up. And how do you delegate and your management styles to get things done, and what delegating is, and also what delegating isn't. We're not going to go back through SMART goals. I'm sure you learned about it. They're great. They're great to use. I actually have a YouTube, shameless plug here, but I actually have a YouTube. The first webinar that I did this year was on setting SMART goals. So if you want to go back and do a refresher on setting SMART goals, I can send Monica the link, or it's youtube.com, and Entropia Media is my YouTube channel. But setting those goals helps you in managing not only your expectations, but also the expectations of others. Why is that? Number one, when you set the SMART goals, everyone's on the same page. You're very clear. There's clarity. Right? Is that what you learned when you were learning about SMART goals? To be very clear, everyone's on the same page. So when you do that, you've set your SMART goals, it will help you to facilitate alignment as well as accountability. That alignment, you know what? I thought we were supposed to be doing that. And then your PI will say, well, no, I thought we were doing this. You've already set the goals. You have them documented. You can go back. And the other thing that the SMART goals do in terms of managing expectations is it gives you a document. It gives you a baseline. It gives you as a point of reference for feedback discussions and review. So if your advisor, when you have that initial conversation, your advisor or any conversation is expecting you to produce results for this, it's okay to jot down in your journal, these are our expectations, or these are the goals. This is what we agreed upon. And I will tell you, you ask for practical tips, or you ask for little things that you can do, write these things down. Keep them in your lab notebook, or keep a journal. Whenever you have a meeting with your PI, whenever you have a meeting with a group of collaborators, make sure that you take notes, right? Our minds, we have so much going on in terms of experiments and data that we don't always remember these things. But when you write it down, you can always go back to them. And it's a point of reference for those expectations. The other thing that happens when you're setting expectations or managing those expectations, if you look in your packet, there's a JPEG, or there's a picture. It says, say what you mean and mean what you say. That goes back to your SMART objectives and the communication piece. You're very specific about what it is that you're wanting to do, and you're measurable. So the communication part on setting the expectation is key. It's critical. Communicate, 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 particularly in expectations. You can't over-communicate in terms of getting things done. You want to make sure that people are clear. You want to make sure that people understand. So when you think about the communication, you think about the communication styles and managing those expectations, what it is that you're supposed to be delivering. You think about the style or the method that works best. Face-to-face works really well. I would advise you to have at least one face-to-face, a quarter or a month or so. But if your advisor is kind of busy and you do emails, do some email exchanges. But also try to follow up as often as possible with face-to-face, video-to-video types of conversations to make sure that you are getting that clarity. Say what you mean what you say, be specific in the expectations. This is where we're going to go back to the delegating. if you're managing something and you have an expectation, let me step back. You're managing a project and you're responsible for that entire project. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything that is required of that project. This is where you have delegation skills. How do you determine, or how do you know what to delegate and who to delegate it to? You first have to think about what is needed, what needs to be done. Then you can assess who has the appropriate skill set to do that thing that you need done, right? So I'm not a mechanic. If you needed to have something done in your car, you wouldn't necessarily say, okay, I'm going to delegate Marquita to change the oil. No, you don't necessarily want me to do that, right? But you want to look at your other friends or other colleagues and say, you know what, maybe Giovanna, she's really good at cars. I'm going to delegate that to her. Delegating a task to someone and still expecting it to get done. Delegating doesn't mean that you're now hands off. It doesn't mean that you have no responsibility in the matter. Delegation, however, means that you're leveraging your time and trusting and allowing someone else to partake in this process. You still have to follow up with them. You still have to give them instructions or directions. You give them the room to grow and do what they need to do, but it doesn't mean that you're completely, all responsibility is not off just because you've delegated to someone else. At the end of the day, the buck stops with you in terms of delegation. You still are responsible for the end product, even though you've asked someone else to help you with that by delegating that task. Does that make sense? I know a lot of times in management, we want to say, oh, I'll give this to him or I'll give this to her. I'm delegating, I'm delegating, I'm delegating. Yeah, you're getting it off of your desk, but you're still responsible for it. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Even in the communication, delegating in communication, whether you're delegating or if something has been delegated to you, manage the expectation of it getting done. Ask questions for clarity. If it's something that you don't understand, ask questions. And I know a lot of times we say, oh, I'm not going to ask that question because they'll think that I don't know. Well, yeah, that's why you ask the question, because you don't know. Asking questions is not a sign of weakness. Asking questions means that you've thought about this enough that you don't have the knowledge and you want to seek their advice, or you want to seek them to help you find answers. The other thing about communicating and managing the expectations with people management, your time management, is be open and honest, be upfront. I can't emphasize this point enough. Sometimes we don't want to communicate. Sometimes we don't want to share information, bad data, bad experiments, bad results. We want to kind of keep it to ourselves and not talk to a manager about it. Well, I would say it's better to discuss it on the front end rather than it snowballing and it being out of control. At least by communicating, having some ongoing communication that manages the expectations of what can be done and what can't be done, right? And so that leads us to the next point on the managing of the expectations. Not only are you communicating, say what you mean and mean what you say, sometimes you will have to say no. Because if you never say no, what does your yes really mean? That goes to the point of your expectations of managing your time, your expectations of managing people. It has to be realistic and achievable. Sometimes your PI, PIs are out of touch. They aren't in the lab. They don't understand some of the day-to-day operations, but it's up to you to communicate with your PI on what is realistic, what's achievable, right? And so when you do that, I often tell people you may want to take the approach of under-promising but over-delivering. Have you ever heard that? Mm-hmm. Under-promise, over-deliver. When you do that, or if you kind of adopt that approach sometimes in terms of managing your expectations, that allows you to have and foster a better, healthy work-life balance. You aren't so stressed out because you've got to deliver. Well, I said I was going to do that. She's expecting me to deliver this by the end of the week, when if you had really thought about it, there's no way in the world you'd be able to conduct 3 24-hour experiments on Monday and have the data by Friday, right? It's just unreal. It's not good for your sanity. By under promising and then over delivering, it really does safeguard your credibility and reputation. You're managing the expectations of what people can expect of you. What type of person is this? It's going to be helpful if you manage the expectations, under promising, over delivering as you're going on to the workforce. And people have recommendations. They give you recommendations. You don't want anyone to say, well, you know, Jennifer, she's always saying what she can do, and she's a great scientist. However, she tends to overextend herself and not be able to meet many of the deadlines. So you want to be careful about that. Manage that process. If it's something that you know that you cannot do, it's okay to say, you know, I think we may need to reevaluate this, look at all of the factors that are involved, and let's set a more realistic timeline for this. I know it's hard for some and you're kind of pushing back on your advisors, but you're professionals now, and this is a skill that you're developing. It's the communication process. And how do you deal with difficult managers? How do you deal with managers or PIs who are more autocratic and they don't want to accept that, hey, this may not be realistic? You come to them with facts and data. You come to them and say, you know, this experiment requires X, Y, Z. And in order for us to accomplish this, we're going to need to make sure that we have this time. And I've built in, you know, you just build in time for error. You build in time for living and breathing, or dinner or lunch. And once you have kind of looked at what's realistic and you present it, you know, sometimes you may have to present it in a little small graph. Create a graph on your PowerPoint, or create just a little sketch on a paper and present it to your advisor. And you sit and you have the conversation, you communicate. Whatever it takes for you to develop the rapport and allow him or her to see what really is realistic, particularly as they relate, you know, you go back to your SMART goals. Is it realistic? Is this attainable? Is this achievable? Those are things that help in managing the expectations. And if you have to recalibrate, you do so and start over. Now, the last thing, any questions before we go on about managing expectations? I can see how that doesn't work well. If it's a big lab, a lot of people say their hands off. Don't take the time to get to know you. Ariel, can you explain a bit more about what you were saying, where it doesn't work well?
Yeah, I was saying, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was saying that it's a good manager, let's say a PI, is a good manager also when they recognize the strengths and weaknesses of the people that they're managing, because they can single out like, hey, you're good at this. I want you to keep working on that, and I can help you with what you're not so good at. But in the meantime, since you're so good at this, you can help me manage other people and teach them how to do things. But I can see how that can be a problem in like big labs when if you have a managing PI that's like a laissez-faire where it's very hands-off, they don't get the time to know you. So I think that's a good skill as a manager, is to know the strengths and weaknesses of the people that you're managing, and you know, being able to delegate work and get things done as well.
Absolutely. One of the things that we kind of take for granted, and now that you're in graduate school and you're going to be giving advice to undergraduates who want to think about graduate school, tell them to evaluate, ask questions about the management style before you join a lab. I don't care what type of science this particular professor or PI is doing. If that style does not work with you, then the entire experience will not be pleasant, because you're not going to get what you need. So it's better to be in a lab where there is fit. We talk about fit for culture. It's better to be in a lab where there is fit than trying to be in a lab just because it's some high profile name. Yes, I mean, I do definitely think that some PIs are out of touch, and that goes back to the whole managing up aspect, is where you keep them in your conversation, you keep them abreast of what's going on, what's relevant, what's important to you, what's important to students, what's important for, you know, not just the science, but the people who are doing the science. Any more comments or questions on the managing expectations part? How do you feel how do you feel that you are managing your expectations of yourself as well as helping to manage the expectations of others? Do you overcommit? Liz is saying, yeah, somewhere.
I can comment on that. I'm on the phone.
Okay.
So an issue that I have is that I like pleasing people a lot. And I tend to say yes, and I tend to get excited, even about social commitments. And then I find myself overbooking. And I think because I like pleasing people, the other issue that I could foresee is that if eventually I end up managing people, it's very hard for me to delegate because I don't want to feel like I'm bossing people around. And that's something that I'm going to have to work with to improve, because as a grad student, I would find myself overwhelmed with work and everyone offered help, but I just always did everything myself. And I'm sure I could have had a smoother couple of months at the end if I would have delegated and let other people help me.
Delegation is sometimes hard for us because, especially when it's dealing with our own experiments or our own data, and if we're at the end of the road and we're trying to finish up, you're asking me to have someone else do this, and they don't know how to do it like I know how to do it. But again, it goes back to delegating. Delegating, you have to know the strengths. You have to know the skills of the people in which you're asking them to do. In some cases, when you delegate, you're giving that person room to grow. You're allowing them to learn. And so you're being a great manager, you're being a great mentor and teacher when you're delegating. You also know, and you will know, what you can delegate and what you can't delegate. Because, again, here's the mirror test, holding up the mirror. We don't have to be in control of everything. We know which things are critical and which things aren't necessarily critical, and we can allow someone else to help us. Because when we do that, it frees up time for us to work on higher value or more important things. So if you do find yourself having a problem with delegating or having a problem identifying which types of things I can delegate or which types of things I should be delegating, just simple. Everything for me is not write a list, but write a list does cover a multitude of things, but write a list of all of the things that you have to do and just evaluate and say, hey, is this really important? What's the worst thing that would happen if it went wrong? Because that's what you're really concerned about when you delegate it, that it's not going to work out. Something's going to happen. Well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Okay? Once you start to do that, the more you start to practice it, it's a little difficult at first, but the more you do it, the easier it will be to let go of control in certain areas and delegate or allow people to help you in others. Okay, any other questions? The managing the expectations part. It's okay to push back. It's okay to push back. That's if you never say no, what does the yes really mean? Don't allow people to pile so much stuff on you, whether they are a manager or your colleagues. Try not to allow people to continue to pile things on you where you're ineffective. And they're expecting you to deliver. You want to deliver, but because you've not said no, nothing gets done. So managing the expectations, communicating, using those SMART goals as a baseline or as a point of reference to manage the expectations of what is going to be done, when it's going to be done, how long it's going to take to get it done, who's responsible for getting these types of things done. Manage the expectations by managing the people. Now, the last part is, and I love this one. I think I love it so much that I want to put it on. I'm going to share the screen. And you tell me, has this ever happened to you? I'm going to put it up, and then let's see. Lack of preparation on your part does not make it an emergency for everyone else. Have you ever heard that? Lack of preparation on your part does not necessitate an emergency on mine. Just because you've been poor with your time management and getting things done, that doesn't now mean that I have to drop everything that I'm doing to deliver. It's time management. And that's the last section that we're going to be focusing on today and talking about. We talked about people management. We talked about managing the expectations. And the last part is time management. Now, we definitely aren't going to go through all of the slides in the packet. Yeah. Do you need to take a break? Yes. Just a quick 2-second break. Stretch. Okay. We're here for the long haul. We're almost there. Managing the time. I've got 22 minutes. What can we get done in 22 minutes? And me managing 22 minutes. So, time management. Just because I'm poor manager of my time doesn't mean that you have to suffer because of it. If you're a manager, you're managing people, or if you are being managed, you know how that feels. Deadlines. Professors, PIs are notorious. I mean, I often ask my friends, I think I even said it on Twitter, why is it that everyone wants to wait until the last minute to turn in a grant? You're always rushing. Oh, I have a grant to turn in on this deadline. Did you not know that like months ago? Right? So why is everything this sense of urgency? Why? Why stress yourself out? How do we become better managers of time? Here's an exercise that I want you to do really quickly. Everyone have a pencil in front of them? Pencil, paper? Write down the word time, T-I-M-E. T-I-M-E. Time. It's all about me. I have to manage me. The M-E in time means that it's up to you. It's up to me when you're looking at it. What are you doing with your time? How are you managing it? Doesn't matter what system that you're using, or time management system, what tool you're using. If you don't have the time to do it right, if you don't have the time to use it 100%, then, and you're not going to practice things that you're using, the things that you learn in time management, it's counterproductive. Using a time management tool 30% of the time, or only using the 30% of its capacity, doesn't help you out at all. It's actually adding more time, because now you're going to have to not only use that tool because you're not using it to its full capacity, you're going to have to fall back on the way that you used to do it. So you're doubling the work. So if you don't have time to fully use these time management tools or practicing and implementing them, don't even bother. Just kind of keep doing it. You don't want to overwork yourself. Okay? I'm going to skip over a couple of things and talk about, it's all related, but the truth about your time. You know, we all have this. Yes, Gabrielle.
I just had a quick comment. I feel like, wait, there's a lot of background. I cannot barely hear my...
Let me mute me.
Okay, that's better. I just had a sort of... I know that time management is all about me, but I feel like as graduate students, we don't have that much liberty to say to the PI, you know, you're making me do all of this, but I can, you know, because their expectation, I feel for the most part, is like, well, you do whatever is necessary to get it done. It's not like, well, you know, I'm about done in the lab, but then you want me to read all of these like papers or grants that needs correction, but I wanted to go for a run or do something else. And they will be like, well, you can do this, just postpone whatever else. And I feel like as graduate students, we're not that free to just say no, especially when you and your PI can, you know, if you do this all the time, eventually he can say, well, this person is sort of a slacker, and you can create some friction if that is the expectation of the PI, you know, if he's like that. I don't think it's that simple that you can say, well, you know, no that easily. At least that's my sort of feeling that in general, I would say. I don't know what everybody else thinks. I cannot.
Dr. Q, you're muted. Sorry.
Are we at a hard stop for?
We have maybe a few minutes after, but a buffer, but not that.
Okay, so it's pretty much a hard stop at 4 o'clock. So, Gabrielle, one of the things that you have to remember, and this is about culture. You talk about graduate students, we talk about postdocs, we talk about the culture of the labs these days and what we can do and what we cannot do. I am of the mindset graduate students have more power, they have more voice than you realize. You have a voice. We just talked about managing the expectations piece. We just talked about coming to an agreement of what is expected or what is not expected. So when you have that conversation with your PI, your PI may expect you to do 2 or 3 experiments per week. I don't know. I'm just kind of making up whatever the expectation is. But you also know that you want to have balance. You know what's needed for you. It goes back to the management style. It goes back to how comfortable you are in terms of communicating. It really does go back to finding common ground. It goes back to negotiating. Well, we haven't talked about negotiating, but it does go and speak to negotiating. Well, I want to do this, but you need this. How do we find a balance? So if your advisor is expecting you to do things, there are only 24 hours in a day. And yes, we tend to not have as much sleep as we normally think about, but you can speak up and say, well, I really need to do this. If I do this, what does this mean? How can we come to a compromise? It's the manager style. And like I say, this is something, I'm sorry, it's a discussion. We could probably spend an hour talking about management strategies or tips on how do you deal with these things. Because that's what I do. I coach clients on how to deal with specifics just like this. But the one thing that I want you all to remember is you have a voice. You know your value. You know your worth. How you communicate that value and your worth in balancing and getting everything that you want. There are some sacrifices that you will have to do. Don't get me wrong. There will be sacrifices. But it goes back to sometimes you just got to say no. You've got to say no. And I know that there is a lot of fear sometimes of backlash from your PIs. If you push back, if you say, no, I'm not going to do this. But 9 times out of 10, for the most part, they are setting an expectation of you, of what they want. But if you never communicate to them and let them know that this is not realistic, how will they know? They're just going to continue to go on because that's what expectations are. They're basing it on past performances. They may have had a lab of graduate students who didn't need sleep. And so when someone new joins their lab, their expectation is based upon what they have seen from previous years. But unless you're willing to communicate something different or to share something different, they're going to continue on with that level of expectation.
Yeah. I think there's also opportunity sometimes to negotiate. Yes, if you need this paper reviewed by tomorrow, I'm willing to do that, but, I'll need more time to get the results on that other experiment that you had me working on.
I was going to say, so I had this sort of happen to me in a way that, the PI would tell me, well, I've already coached and taught so many people before you and all of them can do it. Why can't I just do it the way that they did it? Meaning that, they work for however long hours and that something like that. And then they can say, well, maybe you're not just committed enough. You're not, you don't want this enough, that you prefer. I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but you get that sort of pressure of you need to drop everything and you need to do this to show that you're committed to the research, to show, so anything outside the lab or anything that you want to, if you don't want to do that much that day because you want to take a day to do all their stuff just for yourself, people just sometimes aren't able to see that. or understand that concept because maybe they didn't, or maybe people previously in the lab has not done that. So that's sort of my point, that it's sort of hard to sometimes say no. But anyway, we can discuss this later.
Okay. No, I think it's a really great point. And I think that, I mean, follow me on Twitter. I'm at Dr. Qualls. Follow me on Twitter, or I may be able to come back and we can just have another discussion or one-off on how to do some of these things, because it's really important. The stress levels of graduate students, because they feel as though that they have to perform, the pressure to perform, but they have the pressure to perform 24 hours a day based on, as you said, the expectations of a PI, because he or she is basing it on their former students. Times have changed. The way in which we operate has changed. You know, the productivity levels, the way that you manage your time and utilize your time, given some of the technological tools that we have, can allow you to actually be more productive in less time than those graduate students that may have been there 5, 10, or 15 years before you. But sometimes your PI doesn't quite understand that. And so that's where you have to go back with the data. And as Giovanna said, the negotiation aspect and how you say it is very important. The communication, the tone, and the words and language that you use, and how you're able to manage or divvy up your time and sharing that with your advisor is also important. The other thing that I will say about this, and then we'll just kind of go on and wrap up on the time management aspect, is sometimes you have to seek out other people to help you. Talk about how to manage this time. If you have an ally, if you have a professor that could potentially talk to another professor. If you have I don't know what your graduate counselors are like, or if you have a graduate representative, in a general discussion, this may be something that is brought up on, you know, how do we get our professors, or how do we get the faculty to become more open to understanding work-life balance and the needs of change of the graduate students, the work-life balance needs of a graduate student. So different channels that you can utilize if you aren't quite at the point where you can have the one-on-one discussion with your PI. Okay. Time management. So when you guys first started, when we first started the session, not a lot of you raised your hands that you had a problem with time management. So, you know, you feel as though you're pretty productive, you're pretty efficient in utilizing your time. How is that? When, you know, when we really think about it, the truth about our time, it can be broken down into 3 categories. And you can see this in your slide, the slide pack. Your time is really what you want to do, the things you must do, and then the things that waste your time. And in our minds, we think that we spend the majority of our time doing the things that we must do, or the things that we want to do. But in actuality, most of our time is wasted. We are spending our times on time wasters, things that don't add value. What are some of the things that are time wasters? That we don't think that they're time wasters, but if you're talking about being productive and efficient with your time, the number one time waster is email. How much time do you spend on email? How much time do you spend on social media? I know I'm guilty of that. When you go on just to check one little tweet or one little post, and the next thing you know, what you only intended of being 2 minutes has actually turned into 45 minutes or an hour. And now that time is just gone, never to be recouped. The time that you spend in your laboratory when you go in, and, you know, for those people that think that I'm in the lab from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. at night, 12, 13, 14, 15 hours, when you really take an assessment of what's happening during those 12, 13, 14, 15 hours a day, they're not doing anything. They're wasting a lot of time just there for the sake of being present. When if you really looked at or carved out, I have people do a time budget. And it's quite eye-opening when you do your time budget. If you think that being at the lab 12 hours a day, and you're working in a lab 12 hours a day, which most of us don't. We may physically be in the building, but we're probably only doing a good 3 to 4 hours of work per day. Because how much time do you spend, again, on social media? How much time are you spending just chit-chatting with your lab mates? How much time are you spending walking down the hall, looking and seeing in other people's lab? All of those things add up, time wasters. And so we won't do it now, but in your packet, there's a section for you to kind of list and evaluate what are some of your time wasters. What are they? How can you tell if it is a time waster? What are some of the ways that you can tell? There's a time waster litmus test that you can use. Can you control it? If you can control it, what will you gain if it's eliminated? So list all of the things that you're doing and what's going to happen if you don't do that thing. Let's see, hold on. Yes. A lot of people think in terms of in your time management, multitasking. People want to say, oh, I'm great at multitasking. That helps me to do more things. But on a time management aspect, managing your activities and seeing what actually has to be done, multitasking means that you are not focused or paying attention to one thing. And more than likely, you'll have to end up doing something over. Be quality. Focus on quality and getting one thing down. That's not to say that you can't do multiple tasks or have them kind of going on, but when you want to brag or say that, oh, I'm great at multitasking, may not necessarily be the thing that you want to say that you're doing, because something will suffer in quality. Prioritizing your priorities, again, the list. Is it urgent? Is it not urgent? Does it have to be done now? So think about prioritizing the priorities, prioritizing all of your activities. There's another slide here, another exercise that you can do on your own. These are probably better suited for you in your quiet time to kind of do and go through self-directed studies. I'm not being lazy or laissez-faire. This is just something for you to do on your homework, if you will, the follow-up. But prioritizing the priority, there's a scale that you will monitor, the impact. Is it high impact? Is it low impact? Or is it urgent? Is it not important? And that will help you to start prioritizing the priorities. And some things get knocked off the list. It doesn't have to get done. And it frees you up time to be able to go for a run or go for a bike or go to dinner, hang out with your friends. Be very careful of procrastination in terms of your time management. That's a time robber of procrastination. We convince ourselves that we have more time than we do. We have 24 hours in the day. Start to do yourself a time budget. How much sleep is required? How much sleep do you need to function? And then after you deduct the sleep, how many activities do you have within your day that are actually time bound? So do you have a meeting set up that's a 1 hour meeting? So for example, this session, you had 2 hours blocked out for this session. When you do your time budget, much like you do your own financial budget, because remember, when you think of time as your currency, how you spend your money and how you spend your time, where are you spending your currency? And if you start to think about it that way, I think many of us will be more conscious about the activities that we're doing and what we're allotting our time to. Time is money. It's our currency. Let's see. I'm going to summarize Entropia tips on time management as we kind of bring all of this together. Just some time management tips. Find a time of the day when you're most productive. Everyone's not a morning person. Everyone's not a night owl. If I'm in your lab and everybody is there in the wee hours of the morning, they want to get there at 5:30, 6 o'clock. If you know that's not you, you don't necessarily have to force yourself to be there at 5:30. If you know that you work better in the afternoons or the evenings, then that's when you set your time, because that's when you'll be the most productive. At the end of the day, it's about productivity and efficiency. It's not just about showing face. When you're in the zone, you're in the zone. Work. Keep going. You can rest when you're not in your zone. Make time management a habit. Practice it. Be deliberate. Work on, again, going back to the expectations, saying no to some things. Managing your time. Again, multitasking is counterproductive. It divides your focus. And no is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence. And it's okay to have a one-word sentence or answer. that's it. I apologize for rushing through the time, but on the negotiation or balancing part, I think we had some very rich discussions in terms of the management and learning more about some of the styles and how to apply them to balance out what we kind of rushed through on the time management part. But again, if you go through your packets, you'll see some of the exercises, and it's pretty much self-explanatory. It's just really a matter of, are you going to do it or not? So with that, thank you for your attention and participation. No one fell asleep for those of you that I saw in the video, so that's always a positive thing for me. Most people either interacted or left something in the chat box, and I also love that. It lets me know that you are engaged, and when you're on this side, it's always good to know that people are engaged, that they're getting something. So that's just kind of something, even for me, you didn't realize it, but I was even managing you in terms of getting the feedback that I needed to go throughout the rest of the workshop. I needed you to interact. I needed you to comment. And so giving those types of cues of what I needed helped me to manage this particular situation. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. Thank you for inviting me for doing the workshop. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I hope that you at least learned one thing new that you'll be able to apply as you go back in your labs and finish your graduate career. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Marquita. The students are all saying thank you on the chat. We really appreciate you having you here. All right, everybody. I think our next session, Monica, is August 23rd.
I think 24, 23rd. I can't remember.
Check your calendars. Make sure you have it separated. Okay.
Follow me on Twitter.
Yes. Do follow Marquita on Twitter. She's amazing with her advice and her insights. So
some days I get in zones, and Monica will tell you, I'm in a zone.
Yeah. All right. See you all soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.